it's Michaela, and you're watching FunsizedStyle. The past few months have been absolutely insane, and I wanted to share with you a little bit about my most recent travel adventure and what ensued with that. It was absolutely crazy. If you follow me on Instagram, then you know pretty much all of it, but obviously some of it's kind of hard to share via Instagram, and this is a great way for me to be able to just sit down and share with you everything that went on during that crazy time. You'll notice I am in a different wheelchair, which I'll get into, which is the whole point of this video. July 18th through the 22nd, I traveled from Detroit Metro Airport to Omaha, Nebraska for the Osteogenesis Imperfecta National Conference. My friend Jessica and I went, and this trip was really special for me for a variety of reasons, but one being that this was my first time back flying, traveling since my spine surgeries in 2020. And if you don't know this about me, one thing about me is I love to travel. It's something that is like one of the most important things in the world to me. I love traveling. Like, it literally brings me such joy. I can't even begin to describe to you how much traveling brings me joy. Like, if there's one thing I could do for the rest of my life, that is travel. Like, any opportunity that I get to travel, I say yes to, and I have definitely started to gain quite the list of states that I've traveled to, but I have so much more that I want to see and explore in this world that I haven't gotten the chance to yet. And this trip meant so much to me because when I had my spinal fusion surgery, we obviously didn't even know if I would make it through the surgery, let alone being a trach, of becoming paralyzed, ever being able to do any of this again. Not to say that people who are on a trach or paralyzed can't travel. It's obviously even more difficult than it is in my current circumstances. It would be so much more difficult. It's not something that I would be able to do as often as I do now, or am going to start to do again now. Having osteogenesis imperfecta on top of that, and just not knowing what my circumstances would look like, and being on that plane as we were taking off, I realized, like, it was just another realization that I'm living in the moments that I prayed for, that I fought for. Like, that's why I took the big risks, so that I could be here for the long haul, to be able to go on more adventures like that. And it just really meant a lot to me to be able to go, and I'm so grateful for my friend Jessica for being willing to go with me on this trip. Even though it was more chaotic than any other trip I've been on, and I've traveled a lot, we still had the best time. So I want to preface it with that, because we still were able to laugh through it all. There were definitely some tears, but it was still such a great time, and I'm so glad that I went and that I was able to go. And I'd obviously never been to Omaha, Nebraska before. The Osteogenesis Imperfecta Conference is held every 2 years, and 2020 was supposed to be the next one, but we all know what happened there, and it got canceled. There hasn't been another one since because of COVID, which is absolutely ridiculous, but it's whatever. They're back now, and I'm so grateful. It was such a great time. There's a little recap of where I went and why I went on this trip. We flew Delta Airlines. I always fly Delta Airlines. I just really like that airline. Been treated really well in the past. One thing I do want to say, if you're unfamiliar with the reality of traveling as a wheelchair damage from airlines is incredibly common. It happens multiple times a day through all different airlines. So before I share more of the story, before you say fly a different airline, that literally does nothing. It happens quite literally on every single airline. It is a huge problem in the travel industry, specifically in the airline industry. And there's actually federal legislation that has been passed many years ago that make it's federally illegal for these airlines to damage wheelchairs. And it's a huge problem, and I've heard the horror stories across social media for wheelchair users and traveling, air travel. But it's something that I love to do. If it wasn't something that I love to do as much as I do, then I probably wouldn't take the risk. But it's something that brings me so much joy, and if I never traveled again in that capacity, I quite literally wouldn't be the same person. Like, it brings me that much joy. I'm not naive to these risks, but it's been one that I've been willing to take and will continue to take because traveling brings me that much joy. And the reason that I choose Delta Airlines also is because at the end of every year, airlines have to federally report and release these reports publicly, how many mobility devices they damaged that year. And Delta always comes out the best of the least amount of mobility devices damaged. Not to say that it doesn't happen, it definitely does, and that happened to me, which is why I'm sharing this with you. That is the reason why I choose Delta Airlines and will continue to, because statistically, they continue to be one of the best. I was already very excited, obviously, for my trip. However, upon arrival to Omaha, Nebraska, I realized I had found out that my chair was completely destroyed. I am currently in a manual wheelchair right now. I purchased this cash pay about 6 years ago. Insurance companies don't pay for both a power wheelchair and a manual wheelchair. Thank God I have this, but I don't travel with this wheelchair, and I didn't have it with me on this trip. And like I said, I've traveled a lot. I've traveled dozens of times. I've been very fortunate. Like I said, I've heard the horror stories, and the most amount of damage that I've had is a ding to the wheel, or a ding to the control pad, or my footrest is a little bit, and it's really easy to fix, but nothing that has ever affected the functionality of the chair, or nothing to the extent of not being able to use it at all. I was so excited. We landed. It was a great flight, and when they were bringing my wheelchair to the plane, because I get in the aisle chair and then I go to my wheelchair, they bring it right up to where you board and deplane. Jessica realized, even from seeing it out the window, that the wheels were bent, and seeing that the wheels were bent, I was certain that there was going to be more damage, because for that amount of damage to happen, for the bent wheel to happen, I knew there had to be more, and there was certainly more. I'll be inserting pictures throughout this. The pink frame there was a large piece broken completely off. I don't know where it went. When they brought the chair to me, it was just gone. The armrests were pushed down. Like I said, the wheels were bent inward, so I was actually unable to back up, and Jessica had to manually turn the wheels when I had to turn, and she had to lift it up a little bit. The footrest was also a little bent. The frame in the back took a big dent, as well as the bottom of the frame was also dented. From the photo of the frame, it doesn't look that bad. It just looks like a little scratch. There's another part to this. A way that God always provides is that Promobile, the manufacturer of my wheelchair, I have the Promobile Koala, and I love it. They were a sponsor of the Osteogenesis Imperfecta National Conference, and I knew that going to this, so I was really thankful that if this had to happen, that it was on a flight to an event that I was going to that Promobile was sponsoring, because I figured that they could help in some capacity. We arrived Thursday evening, and Promobile wasn't going to be there until Friday afternoon, so thankfully I was able to ride in the chair to get it to our hotel. I was very frustrated. Obviously, I've heard the horror stories, but this is the first time that it's happened to me in a major extent that affected the functionality of the chair, and it wasn't until that Friday that I realized how incredibly awful it was. The damage is more extensive than I even thought, and there were so many aspects of this trip that were so chaotic. The Osteogenesis Imperfecta Foundation had set up transportation to pick us up from the airport to the hotel, because the hotel that was hosting the conference didn't have wheelchair accessible transportation. Their airport shuttle was not wheelchair accessible, and the foundation knew that, so they contracted to get a separate shuttle with a wheelchair ramp to pick us up that would circle every 15 minutes. However, that ended up falling through in some capacity, because it's supposed to circle every 15 minutes, and we waited an hour and a half for the shuttle to come pick us up. Only a spot for one wheelchair, And mind you, most of the attendees for this conference are wheelchair users. Thankfully, the other individuals that were waiting with us were ambulatory enough that they were able to transfer to the shuttle seats. I was not. I had to remain in my wheelchair. And so thankfully that the other passengers were able to transfer so that I could get on the bus. So we got to our hotel that night and got dinner and honestly just like went to bed. My shoulder was really sore. I don't have shoulder problems, but my shoulder was really sore because the armrest was so broken that my shoulder was like leaned completely down. So I just wanted to go to bed. Once I arrived to Omaha, I had to file a claim with Delta because they're legally responsible to pay for all the damages done to my chair, and that process took so long. We were there about an hour, a little over an hour after our flight landed, dealing with this. So I missed out on a lot of my trip as a result. So that was Thursday, and then Friday we got up. I didn't want to waste the day. As far as I knew, my chair was still functional. So we got up and we went to downtown Omaha in the old market area. I checked it out. Not very accessible area. The rest of Omaha was, but the old market was not. But we still had a good time. We went to this really cute coffee shop, went to a couple shops, and I obviously had a difficult time getting around because my wheels couldn't back up. So every time I wanted to back up, I had to like turn instead, and sometimes there wasn't always a great way to turn. So it was really chaotic, but obviously our trip was so short. We'd never been to Omaha before. We wanted to make the most of it. The transportation we used in Omaha was Z-Trip. That was really great up until Sunday, which I'll get into. But so it's like Uber, but with wheelchair accessible vans. So we used that to get around Omaha. Very affordable and overall pretty great. There was a few issues, which I'll get into. After Friday afternoon was rolling around, we spent the morning in Old Market, and then Friday afternoon we knew that Permobile was getting ready to arrive, and so we wanted to get back to the hotel to get lunch so that we could meet Permobile there as soon as they... Now, mind you, I felt really bad going to the Permobile booth because they're not... The reason they're there at the conference isn't to do wheelchair repairs. That's not why the OIF invites them to the conference. They're there because most people with OI use a Permobile, and they're just a really popular brand within the OI community, and they're there to sell and promote their products. They're not there to do wheelchair repairs specifically at this conference. But I've been a Permobile user since for 23 years, and they have been so good to me and my family, and so I knew like they've been just great. So I figured I would just ask what I could do or what they could do to help, if anything, given the damage that I had. So them there was just another example of how God always provides, because the two guys that were there, I'd never met them, but they recognized me. Like I said, I've been with Permobile for 23 years, and they've been great to my family and I, and I've been such a loyal customer for so many years, and also with my public presence, their products get a lot of free advertisement because of me. I told us that they recognized me, and they had named the Michigan people that I work with, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know them? And they're like, oh yeah, we've heard your name, like, and stuff. So that was really comforting to know that they, like, were familiar with me, and even though I hadn't met them and before this, and they took a look at my chair and told me how bad and how dangerous the damage was. It was greater than Jessica and I even could see. The bottom of the metal frame that basically is holding everything in the chair, they were worried that the bottom of it could completely fall out. They said that this is really bad, it's really unsafe, and you will be getting a brand new wheelchair out of this. And I couldn't believe it. If you don't know, I had just got that chair, a new Permobile Koala, in December of 2022. Yes, 2022. And I fought for 11 and a half months to get that chair. I'm waiting through insurance. Previous Koala that I had survived 10 flights and 10 or 12 flights, and this one didn't even survive one. I was going to be getting a whole new chair out of this, and yes, Delta is legally responsible for replacing the chair when it can't be repaired. The reason that it had to be replaced and couldn't be repaired is because the damage was so extensive that the safety of the chair was unforeseen. Like, they didn't know what other safety issues there could be as a result of me using this chair for the foreseeable future. Matt and Josh were literal angels to me that weekend because I was just overcome with emotion in that moment when they told me, because my wheelchair is literally my legs. It is a part of me. It is how I live, how I function, how I'm independent, how I was able to go on this trip. I depend on it. It's not a luxury. It's quite literally a necessity for me to live, to function, part of society, to have freedom to live. And in an instant, because of someone's negligence, it was all stripped away. The chair was so unsafe that they said that they were worried for my immediate safety and that I needed to get out of the chair immediately. And I am very grateful for the grace of God, because if you'll remember, that morning we went to downtown Old Market area, cruised around, and I didn't know that the chair was that unsafe, and grateful to God that nothing happened to me while we were out there, that the chair quite literally didn't come out from underneath me, the base of it. I can't even begin to tell you how catastrophic that would have been. Really grateful for the Lord's protection in that, but I said that I obviously don't have another chair with me. They had a pediatric manual wheelchair that they allowed me to borrow for the weekend. I could have cried, because if it weren't for them, I quite literally would have been bedbound in our hotel room until our return flights on Monday. That allowed me to be able to go and have fun and enjoy my trip in some capacity. It still was difficult. In the manual chair, I lost a lot of freedom and independence, not having the autonomy to be able to push the chair myself. Obviously I push this one, and I'm able to push a manual chair, but for that amount of time, for that amount of miles, I just don't have the strength and the stamina, especially after my spinal fusion surgery, to be able to do that myself for long miles at a time. Thank God for my friend Jessica. She was my arms that weekend, and she pushed the manual chair around wherever we had to go and where I wanted to go. But it made things very difficult, like going out to eat, sitting at the table, things that I couldn't do well because of having to use a manual chair. Josh and Matt from Promobile were just like an answer to prayer in so many ways. They had even brought Matt last conference. He drove 15-20 minutes to go get another power wheelchair. Unfortunately, they don't have koalas on hand, but they had this other power wheelchair, a pediatric power wheelchair that they had me try, but it just didn't work for me for a variety of reasons. And that's when I got really frustrated too, because not with Matt and Josh, but the situation at hand, because all I wanted to do was go to Omaha and go to this conference and have a good time. It had been so long since I'd traveled doing what I love, and then in seconds time my mobility was completely stripped from me. I was overwhelmed, I was frustrated, and knew that the next several months were going to be very difficult without my chair. I was able to enjoy the trip. We were still able to go out and do things. You can go on Instagram to see all of them. I've uploaded a lot. But if it weren't for Matt and Josh, I wouldn't have been able to make the memories that I did and go out with friends like I was able to. And so they truly made it possible. What's really difficult about my situation is that airlines are partnered with a vendor, mobility vendors. They're partnered with a company called Scootaround, and they provide wheelchair rentals to people. In this instance, however, pediatric rentals are not an option. They pretty much only have adult rentals, and that includes manual wheelchairs. So I couldn't get a rental from Scootaround. Most people can, because most people aren't 2 feet 6 inches tall. I am. And so adult rentals are not safe for me. I am just too small for them. I couldn't get a rental from this vendor even if I wanted to, because they're not available. They don't have pediatric manual wheelchairs and pediatric power wheelchairs. And if I was of average size, yes, having my wheelchair damaged was catastrophic, but most instances people are provided a rental for their trip. But when you're small, like me, there's no options, quite literally. And so that's what makes this even more catastrophic for me than the average traveler who uses a wheelchair. So I just wanted to say that, because I know many of you are going to tell me that you were able to get a rental, but I can guarantee you most of you watching this video are not 2 feet 6 inches tall. Matt and Josh did not have to lend me that pediatric manual wheelchair. They did not have to do that. They were not bound by anything and had nothing to do with Delta Airlines negligence. Because of the kindness of their hearts and good people that they are, they did that for me. And I'm very grateful. They told me that based on the extent of the damage to the chair, that looked like it was dropped about 15 feet from somewhere, from something. To think and to picture my chair falling 15 feet from anything is just like horrifying. I mean, it obviously just put a huge damper on the trip. And as you guys know, I've had challenges from my spinal fusion surgery and an area of my spine that we can't get pain under control really, and issues with one of the screws. I'll have an update on that soon, but also as a result of not having my chair, my back pain has skyrocketed. I endured a pressure sore on my arm because the armrest on my power chair was broken, and unless you live a day in my shoes, the airline industry doesn't understand. It doesn't care about how catastrophic this is for people with disabilities, especially those who need pediatric devices, because rental companies like Scootaround don't offer pediatric options. It was truly only because of God's providence and Matt and Josh that from Promobile that I was able to have a good time otherwise on this trip and was able to do anything. And another instance that happened to me on this trip is that Sunday rolled around, and I'm going to get into more of the wheelchair stuff in a second, but now that you kind of know what happened and the result of that, I'll share a little bit more about the trip and get into kind of where I'm at now. So, and what has happened with Delta Airlines. On Sunday of our trip, we were there Thursday to Monday. On Sunday, we wanted to take a taxi to go get some ice cream. It was really hot outside. The sessions that going on during the certain time period during the day didn't really interest me, and I wanted to go explore Omaha. So we wanted to go to this ice cream shop that I saw on TikTok. It's called Coneflower Creamery. We did get, it was delicious. Highly recommend it if you're in the Omaha area. But I saw this ice cream shop on TikTok, and really popular. I wanted to go. So I tried to go on the app and get a taxi. It was like an Uber. Again, using the app C-Trip, and we get in the cab with this guy, and he's getting my wheelchair hooked up, and he tells me that they charge a $40 fee for wheelchairs on top of the fare of where we're going. And if you're not familiar with the Americans with Disabilities Act, it is highly illegal to charge more for a service because somebody has a disability or uses a wheelchair. That would be the equivalent of a white person, charging a black person more. That is very highly illegal, and this was really bizarre because we had traveled with multiple Z-Trip drivers the whole weekend, and none of them ever mentioned a $40 fee because I'm a wheelchair user. It was actually very affordable to use this service, and so immediately I knew this man was trying to scam me. I said, "I'm sorry, sir, but can't charge me more because I use a wheelchair." He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, that's our policy." I said, "No, it's not. I've ridden with several other drivers throughout this weekend, and none of them have tried to charge me with a $40 fee." Long story short, I demanded to get out of the vehicle because I knew that in that moment he was trying to scam me. So I got out of the vehicle. I was being kind of loud about it so that, God forbid something happened to us, people would see and hear what's going on, because thankfully he pulled up right in front of our hotel lobby. I demanded to get out of the vehicle, so thank God he let me out of the vehicle, and he told me that his manager, he called his manager and he said that his manager told him that there was a $40 fee, and I knew that was a bunch of crap. And so we got out of the vehicle, but it was Sunday afternoon, and so there wasn't a lot of other drivers available because there's not as many wheelchair vans as there are other vehicles with the service. The rest of the weekend, we didn't really have too much of a problem, but Sunday, there just wasn't as many, so we waited an hour for another taxi because I wasn't going to get in the vehicle with this man. So we waited an hour for another one, and sure enough, the next guy, he did not try to charge me a $40 wheelchair fee. He charged me, the $12, and that was it. Anybody else. Ladies, be vigilant, especially, obviously, when you have a physical disability, and I'm sure this man saw my size and thought I was really dumb. I don't know. I'm not dumb, and thank God, Jessica and I were safe. Tried to scam me $40. The hotel shuttle, the wheelchair damage, getting scammed by the Z-Trip driver. It was just the most Like, I've traveled a lot, and I've never had this much chaos on the trip. I brought a wheelchair to the airport because I literally had no choice. We had to get it home. The way it works is Delta Airlines goes through their vendor, who they partnered with, which is Scootaround, and Scootaround contacts the local company that I typically order my chair from here in Michigan, University of Michigan, and so they contacted them, order going, but the problem is there's so many hands in this pot because Michigan has to get the quote from Permobile on how much it's going to cost, and it takes a long time to get the quote. Scootaround can't order the chair until they get the quote from Permobile, and Michigan Medicine, University of Michigan sends it to Scootaround. And so that process alone took like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something insane, too long. And I just want to say, like, in this country, somebody with a significant disability like mine, like, I should never be without my chair for 2 months, ever. Like, it's just not acceptable. And wheelchair damage like this happens daily, and it shouldn't. Another thing I learned during that weekend was the Permobile reps told me that Permobile has offered multiple times to train airlines on how to properly handle mobility devices, and they have refused the training because they said they would rather pay to order new mobility devices for everyone that's damaged beyond repair than to pay to train somebody and make sure that all the chairs get loaded properly without damage. And that is beyond disgusting and something that I really hope changes in the future. I know it's corporate, and I know they only see the dollar signs, but this is damaging people's lives, their livelihood, their safety, their health, and it's wrong. It is wrong. And I've heard the horror stories, but it's obviously harder to advocate on an issue when it hasn't affected you personally. But now it has, and I will continue to speak out about this because I want to use my platform in that way because it matters, and it needs to matter corporate, and it needs to matter to literally everyone. I deserve to travel just as much and with the same dignity as anybody without a physical disability or mobility device. I had no idea that airlines refused training. And it's not just Delta, it is quite literally every single one. Just getting the quote alone, like 2 or 3 weeks, and obviously chair is custom built, so it takes time to build it. And another issue that happened during trying to get the chair ordered was the computer system at University of Michigan and Permobile went down for a couple days, so that also delayed things. I took to social media to share my story. I took to Instagram, that has become my primary platform. I'll link the reel below if you want to watch it. And it garnered about 40,000 views in just like less than a week and gained the attention of the CEO of Delta Airlines. And that was only made possible because of my incredible community here on social media, and I can't thank you guys enough for sharing the heck out of that thing. I utilized Instagram and Facebook, and it got over 200 shares on Facebook, again, as well as almost 40,000 views on Instagram. They were able to expedite ordering the chair. I actually received a personal email from the executive assistant to the CEO, so the CEO is the executive assistant. I received a personal email from him. He apologized for obviously what happened to me. Even called me on the phone. They have gifted me a Delta Airlines gift card as well as a refund on my flights. And I just want to say that this is not the normal treatment that people who have mobility devices damaged get. Most don't hear from the company at all and only deal with Scootaround. It's only because I used my social media platforms as a microphone, and you guys reached out on my behalf, and they hear us. They hear me loud and clear. They heard all of you guys, and when I talked to the executive assistant to the CEO, he had told me that every level of leadership at Delta Airlines was made aware of my incident, and they were going to be doing an investigation to see what happened and who was involved. I don't know what came of that. I do plan on asking after I get the chair, but I just don't want to say or do anything until I get the chair. But they have expedited it, and it is a huge deal that I have heard from the executive assistant to the CEO at a company as large as Delta. Like, you guys have no idea how large that is, and this is not the average treatment. And that's not all. I also received a call from the vice president, one of the vice presidents of Delta Airlines, and I couldn't believe it when the executive assistant told me that he would be calling. He was also made aware of this and called me personally as well. I'm just very grateful for the outreach. They really did sincere. Obviously, those are the top. They are responsible for what happened. They do have the power to mandate training for these employees, and they don't, so they are responsible in that way, but obviously they weren't the ones who dropped the chair, and I recognize that. But ultimately, when you are the leader, you are responsible, and I'm grateful for the outreach that I've gotten, again, because I know that this is not the average response. And please do not, at this point, if you're learning about my story, airline story for the first time here on YouTube, please do not message Delta Airlines or email them. Many of you did when I shared on Instagram, and that was perfect. That was exactly what I needed. But now that I have contacts at the very top, that's no longer necessary at this point. So I just greatly appreciate. I received dozens of messages of people who emailed Delta on my behalf. I truly believe that's what made a difference, and for me to get the attention of corporate. Regardless of any of that, the past months have been so hard. I haven't been able to leave my home safely. Our vehicles are not equipped to transport my manual wheelchair because it cannot be tied down. Tie-down system in our vehicle is set up for my power wheelchair, and they are not the same. And so I have not been able to safely leave my house. 2 months, I have missed out on family events. I have missed out on being able to go and do things, and I will never get these 2 months back. Refund and the gift card, that's all nice, but you can't put a price tag on mobility, safety, and freedom and independence. Like, there's no price tag, there's no amount of compensation that I could ever receive from Delta that could equate to what I've lost the past 2 months. Like, I rely on my chair to live and to function. And the fact that it can just be gone as a result of not having my chair and just not being able to go out and do things, and going to the bathroom is more difficult. Cooking is more difficult. Like, everything is more difficult in my manual chair. And I am grateful that I have a manual chair and that I paid cash for this 6 years ago, because I would be bedbound right now. And Delta Airlines is very fortunate that I have a manual chair to at least be able to be mobile around my home. But I have not been able to be mobile in the community. This is time that I will never get back, and you can't put a price tag on this. And most people said get a lawyer or whatever. Solving issues like this is not as simple as getting a lawyer. Anything through the legal system takes years. Obviously, I have all the photo proof. I've got, Permobile, even though Delta letters saying how it can't be repaired. The stress of a lawsuit, like, I don't want that. I don't want to go around suing people, and anything through the legal system takes years. It's built that way for a purpose, to deter people from suing, and I get that. But it's just not a fight I want to fight right now. They have been great as far as from corporate level, and they recognize what a PR nightmare this has been for them, and I think that can be in some ways more powerful than going through the legal system. So you guys have been such incredible advocates for me, and I can't thank you enough. I am actually leaving again on another trip to New Jersey. I've never been to New Jersey before, but I got invited by Johnson & Johnson to attend the Health eVoices conference in New Jersey at the end of September. And through the incredible contacts that I've been able to build at Delta because of my experience, they're going to make sure that I'm well taken care of this time, as I should have been the first time. They're actually sending a Delta rep or two to each of my gates to help and assist and make sure that the chair is handled properly. So I will have multiple members of Delta waiting for me in Detroit, in New Jersey, back to New Jersey, and then fly back home. So I will have Delta representatives at each checkpoint, basically, for each of my flights. So going to New Jersey and then coming back. I am being well taken care of this time. I am getting my power wheelchair back this week. That's what it sounds like anyway. I'm holding my breath, but it is ready for me. And the incredible team at Permobile also, once they knew that the chair was in their ordering system, they expedited it, because the guys at Permobile knew at the conference what a challenge this has been. So they have pulled strings for me and were able to build my chair in record time. And I do want to say, because of social media outreach and the contacts I have at Permobile, I am receiving my chair in record time. Times with airline claims, I have heard it takes a minimum of 4 to 12 months. And I am getting my chair back in 2 months. And while I'm so grateful for that, it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way for me, with or without a social media platform. It shouldn't be that way for anybody. I will continue to share about this, and I am going to get back up at the end of this month, and I'm going to travel, and I'm going to go to New Jersey, and I'm going to have a great time. And yes, I'm going to take my brand new power wheelchair because I have faith that I will be well taken care of. We're going to keep going because I deserve to, and I deserve to travel. But nobody will ever be able to understand how difficult the past 2 months have been. I will never get this time back, and the challenges that I have faced, on top of the challenges that I already have, are really, really great. The system, the airline industry for people with disabilities is really broken. There's some incredible advancements coming, but it's going to take years for it to roll out in its entirety. But in the meantime, it is a really broken system. The fact that 2 months is considered speedy still makes me sick because, again, it shouldn't be that way. But needless to say, this trip was absolutely chaotic. It was the most chaotic trip of my life for as often as I have traveled, and that I will be traveling, continuing to travel. I am not surprised that this happened to me. It's different when it does actually, whoa, like it rocks your world. And my time would come. I love to travel, and I'm going to continue to travel because it's something that I love to do. It's a risk that I'm willing to take, and I understand that many wheelchair users are not willing to take that risk, but I do want to say you are missing out on a whole heck of a lot in this world, and that risk is worth it to me. And yeah, I just wanted to share kind of the challenge and the burden that I've had to carry the past few months, but your outreach and support has meant so much. I will be cruising again very soon, so I'll be sure to post an update, but I just can't wait to have my mobility, my freedom, my safety, and my independence back. Like, you cannot put a price tag on that in any capacity. I just knew that as soon as I saw the extent of damage to my chair, I just said to myself, they're going to know about this. Delta Airlines is going to know my name, and every level of leadership at Delta Airlines does know my name now. So I'm hoping for change in the future, and will continue to use my voice and my platform as an advocate for that change. Using my chair was worth it. I know that sounds crazy, but I love traveling. I was so glad to see my friends. The conference was so much fun. Again, all made possible only because Mobile, and we were able to make great memories, laugh so much, and it was just a great trip. So I'm really grateful, and light at the end of the tunnel is coming very soon. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.